Hey there, Laura from 5 out of 4 here, and today is all about single fold binding. I get really excited when it's time to finish up a project, and binding of any kind is always pretty awesome. So let's get started. We have our main fabric, which is in the blue, and we have our binding strip fabric, which is in the pink. Now, the first thing we're going to do, and it's easy as pie, is we are going to put these right sides together. So you're going to double check your right sides, and you're going to put them right sides together. Then you're going to pin all the way across. Once you've finished pinning, you will go to your machine, either serge it at 3/8 inch seam allowance, or the lightning stitch, stretch stitch, zigzag stitch at a 3/8 inch seam allowance, all the way across. Okay, so here we are. I've done 2 of them just so that you can see what it looks like serged and what it looks like. This is a small zigzag stitch. Both stitch at a 3/8 seam allowance. Now, I have also pressed the seam allowance up towards the binding, so towards the pink. And I have wrong sides facing up, excuse me. So moving forward, you're going to do the same thing whether you used a serger or you haven't, and you've used your machine. You're going to do the same thing, and that is as simple as folding it over to the wrong side. So it's now wrong sides together. You can pin. Many times your binding piece will be a little bit shorter than your full main piece, so you'll have to stretch a little bit. So you can pin just to keep the ends in place, and then gradually, slightly stretch it however you need to do. But let me show you what it will look like on the right side. All right, here we have it. This is the right side. It's been folded over to the wrong side, and you have this nice, pretty little finished look. Now, okay, let's go back just a little bit. I want to just make sure that we all understand how we're folding this over. Now, I did say you fold it over to the wrong side, right? But what I didn't say is how far you fold it over. You have to be careful, because if you fold over the entire seam allowance on the right side, you won't see any of the binding. So what you're doing is you're folding over to the top of that 3/8 inch. So you see I'm holding it flat and just folding it over there. So you can see, hopefully you can see, I've got to kind of sandwiched it in there. So then I would do that and pin it however I feel like I need to. And just keep checking it to make sure you're not folding it over too much. And you'll adjust this as you're sewing as well, and you'll keep it tucked under just so. But you can see, again, if we had folded over too much, we would literally have no binding showing at all. The next question you have, of course, is now what? So we're just going to talk about stitching in. There are a couple different things you can do. You can stitch in the ditch, which will not only obviously catch the folded over portion, but it will also catch the entirety of your seam here, so you won't see any stitching through once you trim. Or if you like the way it looks and you want to do a lightning stitch all the way across, you can certainly do that too. You can also do a zigzag stitch. I have a machine that doesn't even have a lightning stitch. It only has like 6 different zigzag type stitches. So if I were to use that machine, I would do a zigzag all the way across here. So let me show you a couple different ways, and then you can see which way you like the best. I'll be right back. You can see I have completed both options. I did a zigzag stitch on this, for those of us who don't have the lightning stitch or the stretch stitch, to give a completed edge. I think this is really cute. I've done it on my daughter's tank tops and whatnots before, and I just think it leaves it's just really cute. Then you have the the stitch in the ditch, which I wasn't perfect at, but that's okay. And then I did do a top stitch, so you don't have to stitch in the ditch and you don't have to do zigzag. If you have that lightning stitch, you can do, it's almost like a top stitch just right there on the edge of the binding to give a nice completed look. But you will see the stitch. So like with stitch in the ditch, you won't see the stitch. It'll just kind of look invisible. But if you top stitch with your lightning stitch, then you will see the stitch. Now, let's look at this one. I used my regular machine. I did not use a stretch stitch or the lightning stitch. And as you can see, it doesn't give a lot of stretch. That's why these stretch stitches are important. Because if I give it too much, you hear it pop. And those stitches, you can see right here where the stitches popped open. So it's important to use stretch stitches if you have them, and don't be afraid to use the zigzag stitch. It's still very, very cute and lovely. So now if we turn it over to the wrong side, we see that we have now this flap of extra. So you'll just come through with your scissors and you will just trim that off as close to the stitching as you can get, as is comfortable for you, and go all the way across and you're done. That's all there is to it. That's the single fold binding. There it is, the single fold binding. We're really glad that you joined us today and we hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.